children of sex workers, how did you find out what your parent did, and what attitude towards sex did they instill in you? My mom was a stripper on and off for years. I'm pretty sure she did more than strip too. She had a pretty terrible relationship with her family. So when I was born she moved away and we traveled a lot. We lived mostly with her girlfriends as my mom has been a lesbian since forever, which makes her sex work even weirder. An easy job she could find was sex work. I found out when I was an early teenager. It wasn't like I just found out all of a sudden. Eventually I just put the pieces together. A couple of the hints. Constantly working late nights, like till 4 AM. A ton of makeup. A large collection of lingerie and risque outfits. Bringing random dudes home with her. A lot her friends were like that too. Did any of her classmates find out? Because if so I henceforth pay my respects for the mama jokes you had to endure. I moved a lot so no one really had time to get to know us well enough to figure it out really. That said, one guy did find out when I was 17. Back in 2018, while I was working in Japan, during Christmas time, I stayed with a single mother and her 8-year-old daughter. We matched on Bumble. She was 28 and I was 22. She invited me to stay with her during my stay in Japan. About 2 months or so left of my stay. She wasn't the best mother, though I can't judge. She would leave me to stay with her daughter, despite she had only known me for a few days and I only spoke English. She would leave at erratic hours, leaving her daughter and I at the house. I'd cook for us, and we'd play Nintendo Switch. Eventually, she'd come back from her work, shower, change, then stash cash, yen, in a drawer her daughter showed me. We all spent a lot of time together as a pseudo family going to restaurants, markets, arcades, etc. But when we'd go to bars together with her friends, a lot of dudes knew who she was and would ask if she was still working. Her friends seemed a bit confused of my position as well. I remember asking about it, and she said I'm not a good girl. The days afterwards, when she was out at work, I asked her daughter what she thought her mom did for work. TBH, I was probably out of place for doing that. Her daughter spoke Japanese, and I spoke English, so we could only understand each other through translators. I downloaded a Japanese keyboard, and she typed to me my mother meets with different men every day. I was concerned, so I asked what she meant. She replied that her school friends' parents would tell them that she was a woman who had sex with married men for money. It was so sad that she had this understanding of her mother at such an early age. I never thought of her differently, since she's a single mother taking care of her daughter and also provided a temporary home for me. About a year later, I had work in Japan again and reached out to her. I wanted to check on them, especially her daughter. We spent a few days together, but by the last night together she had drank too much and come clean about her sex work and guilt of being a mother. Apparently, that year, her daughter told her she was embarrassed for her and couldn't have friends because the parents prevented their children to spend time with her. The teachers even preferred not to speak with her due to concerns regarding image from other parents. I still think about her daughter. Japan tends to be very harsh on single mothers, especially the other parents at school. It's very common for single mothers to turn to prostitution because childcare is expensive and hard to access. And sex work is the best money you can get when you don't have a degree, and still more than what you'd get when starting a career, which has terrible hours making it hard to care for a child. You can survive on a part-time job, but money is going to be very tight and your kid will be bullied for being poor. I feel for that kid too. People are being awful to her while her mother does nothing wrong. It's a shame that desperation can lead to career, especially when they have their own dreams. After I found out, I often spoke to her about her plans or family. Her plans were reasonable on paper, yet she was so far behind and had no support from her family. She was never able to get her actual dreams off the ground. Unfortunately, this situation happens all over the world for mothers and their children. We had a friend, male, whose mum worked for a popular establishment. All his friends knew. They gave him heaps about it. I always felt bad for him. It had to have affected him. You can't have people degrading your mum and be okay with it. However, is that society's fault for the view of his mums? I never knew how to view it. She just wanted to pay bills, I guess. I had a friend like this, only his mom worked phone hotlines. And we were in our 20s. So we were mature about it. Not to mention, he and his mom were really open about it. She actually gave him more shit about it than we did. Quite wholesome really. Not for the faint of sex talk. I see the plot writers at Pornhub are on Reddit again. Porn has plot. Yay. The plot is usually you made my sandwich wrong. But, rather than you remaking it or me helping you, I'm going to delay my lunch further by, or I know you cheated. I brought some friends to teach you a lesson, and then they magically learn how to be a sex slave. The end. My 26F mother, 53F, is disabled. So although she has a doctorate in psychiatry, she hasn't actually worked in the field for decades. When I was about 16, she started a side hustle where she was employed by a phone sex line. She has a very nice voice, but also played characters. Although it was especially weird at first, eventually it was just quite funny having a casual conversation with her in her baggy pajamas playing RuneScape. When suddenly she'd get a call and immediately switch on one of her roles and telling them all the skimpy silky things she had on. Some of the calls were just kinda sad, like she had an old lady character, and although there were plenty of folk with a kink, she had this old man who used to just call her to talk because he was lonely. She wanted to just give him her normal number, but the calls were recorded by her bosses. Some were weird. She had a man who liked to listen to her pee, so she kept a glass of water by the toilet and would just go through the motions pretending she was actually going to the bathroom. After not that long it was just kinda funny, and we'd have a laugh about it all. I did invest in a nice noise cancelling pair of headphones though. Edit. Having a catch-up phone call with my mum at the moment and she reminded me that it was a sports water bottle for the pee, not glass. Haha. She also ended up slipping the number for an elderly comfort helpline, Age UK, to the older lonely man when she became a supervisor and her calls were no longer strictly supervised. She could have gotten fired for breaking character, but she did it a good few times for older lonely folk, so they weren't breaking bank. Can't tell if all these responses are fake. Should have put a serious tag. There are no real stories on Reddit. There are no real stories on Reddit. I found out what my father did because he did it to me, and to this day I still get uncomfortable around the idea of sex and I don't trust men at all. There's r/rapper counseling if you need it. Hugs. Thanks so much, but I'm a bit afraid to do that kinda stuff cause of the whole widespread men can't get raped ideology. Bye, thanks so much. Some kid on Sparks Live broke the news to me. That's a great way to find out. Sorry about it, BTW. I had a substitute teacher one time tell me my mom's burlesque venue A touch of class never had the C nor L on the sign. Screw you, Mr. Lassen, I was right when I called you Mr. Less than. R. Simpsons. My parents weren't sex workers, but they did work in the sex industry. It was never a secret what they did. I was often taken to the workplace when I was little, always sequestered from anything graphic or potentially harmful, and it wasn't a big deal. Things were explained to me in very child-friendly, age-appropriate ways and sex was never presented as a taboo. I always loved the sex industry and wanted to be a part of it, and now I'm a sex worker myself. They did work in the sex industry, child-friendly, age-appropriate ways. Chris Hansen has entered the chat. You can and should talk to children about sex. Obviously you're not going to explain everything to a 5-year-old, but kids talk, and it's better to tell them the truth before they pick up nonsense in the playground. My mom charged me $10 to tuck me in, $30 for a bedtime story, and $35 for half and half. Hahaha. You cracked me with this comment. Good job on making a clear joke in these hazy times. I found out when I was in middle school, maybe, so 13. My parents had this laptop that we were never allowed to use, and I was looking for clothes in my mom's closet. Found a shoebox of sex toys and ropes, etc. I immediately told my sister, 1 year younger than me. It made us so angry and I'm not sure why. I think the idea of it clicked in our heads. It only would get more obvious now. BC we knew. They bought very bright expensive lights, blackout curtains, a brand new video camera they hid from us. Sometimes they would do it in the daytime with all of us home, and it was awful. As soon as I could drive I would always take my siblings and leave. In high school a kid came up to me and showed me a video of my parents. Was the most embarrassing moment of my life. I hated my mom and dad. I was so angry that they would do that. I'm 22 now and recently had a huge blowout with my mom and finally confessed to her that I knew and hated her for it. How is y'all's relationship after this big fight? This fight happened about 7 months ago. It was in the heat of the moment and I screamed out how I knew she was a porn star. She said that is fine and what she does with her life is fine. I do agree. I was very young when I found out and it was hard to accept. My feelings were very all over the place. It all started when I broke both of my arms. Apostrophe. Fuck it dude. I was trying to forget this one. And to anyone who wants to know more, please don't. I know more. I'm just commenting so you are reminded again when you see this. I was born with a 10-pound note stuck to my face. You have got to be kidding. Okay, possibly could have been a 5 note. I swear 99% of these are lies. Nah, I'm pretty sure that one Redditor's mom charged them $35 for a tuck-in and bedtime story. I think that was sarcasm. My mom was a stripper and it was all super normalized, but she herself was sexually abusive, so it was all messed up. r/Askreddit After Dark. You can literally apply half of the posts on this sub to there. News outlets take note, future children of OnlyFans merchants will need to see these answers. If my grandma wanted to try out a new move she'd ask me for input before bringing it onto the stage. Nice. My gam loves the sex swing. Says it helps with her hips. A friend of mine got a sex swing to use with his GF, but didn't want to drill into the ceiling joists to hang it, so he brought an engine hoist into his bedroom and set it up there. Joke was on him though, because in the throes of passion her foot went right through the drywall. Dude, I've world roasted his ass for it too. Then we banged your mom. Me, that's cool. She said both of y'all have small dicks. Or she says, or started as a threesome, but she started just watching y'all go at it. Something. Fuck those guys. My mom's not really a sex worker, but she does run a pornography site, a rather impressive pornography site. Since it's a Christian pornography site, she kind of instilled a callous behavior towards sex in me. She still told me that sex was to only be had between married couples. But after you're married anything goes. It's really interesting, especially when you factor in that she's also a breastfeeding consultant and a master chef. It made for a rather interesting childhood, as well as many interesting conversations, as sometimes she is too busy doing consulting work. So sometimes I have to actually help young couples through sex over the phone, which was even more awkward for them, since it was a 6-year-old that was teaching about sex. Could you elaborate on Christian pornography? Is it all missionary? No, it is not all missionary. Contrary to what many believe, but most sexual positions were actually invented by Christians, and at least half of them were mentioned in the Bible. Christian pornography is pretty much normal pornography, but predominantly with the theme of married couple and typically starring an actual married couple, and sometimes that married couple would bring someone new into bed. Or maybe it wouldn't actually be a couple, but a polyamorous marriage, which is again biblically legal if not encouraged. For more information just go to your local library, grab a original King James version of the Bible, and look in the Book of Solomon. In my childhood I always wanted to be like my parents, and I didn't change my mind even after this happened. What are you doing, stepmom? I slipped out in the middle of a porno. You what now? They were in the middle of the video, so the guy's dick pushed me back an 8 times. When I found out I broke my piggy bank. Depression is a guaranteed part of sex work. This question has been asked 1,000 times in this subreddit, and it still doesn't have any good answers. Stop. Congratulations on spending so much time on Reddit that you have seen the same question 1,000 times. I've never seen it asked, and was curious. Might I suggest you stop jacking off, get out of your parents' basement, and go and do something interesting with your day. You never know. You might actually meet a girl. Wow. That's so many assumptions, one can only assume you're projecting. Calm the duck down. Your hostility is almost as bad as your aposting. Well, if you really want to hear it, I'll tell. I guess my shrink's call sexual awakening about a year before puberty. So I figure this was around 11. My mom and dad had actually both met during their work. And I was a mistake, as I was often told. Understand that they had me around 19. And their careers are basically done by 30, more or less. So, they started incorporating me into their scenes. At first, I would watch. Then, I lost my virginity on screen. I guess they made a bunch of money off of it. But I never saw a dime. Now, I just need the damned Loch Ness monster to give me my damn tree fiddy for his blowjob. You probably also should have added a serious tag. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.